What's up, Skins Nation? Welcome to another edition, primetime edition of Pigskin Facts, History and News. I am your host of hosts, Fred Watson Jr. Hope you're having a good weekend, and we're going to get into some good old facts starting out. All right, we're coming near the end of September. I'm excited. Football season is up on us. The regular season, we're coming to the end of preseason. Should be maybe in about another week and a half, I believe. September 8th should be opening day. So I'm really looking forward to that. Really excited about it. And let's get into some questions that we had that I promised you I would answer from the last segment. So, with that said, here we go. What year was quarterback Sonny Jurgensen traded to the Washington Redskins? What year was former Redskins quarterback Sonny Jurgensen traded to the Redskins? Answer: 1964. He was originally drafted by the Philadelphia Eagles. He was traded to the Redskins in 1964, where he finished up his illustrious career. All right, second question. What year was quarterback Joe Theismann at the end of his career? What year was quarterback Joe Theismann at the end of his career? Answer: 1985. It was a Monday night game against the New York Giants. Joe Theismann was going back to pass, and the Giants' defensive front broke through, and they collapsed on him. Lawrence Taylor was involved in the play, and his fibula was snapped. It's a serious leg injury, similar to the same injury that quarterback Alex Smith had last season against the Texans. It was a very, very similar injury. And a matter of fact, the announcers said it was the exact same day, 30 years later, after Joe Theismann had his injury, that Alex Smith had his. What a horrible thing. But 1985 was the year he was carted out in that game, and he never returned to play. And he had a great career with the Redskins, earning them their first Super Bowl berth as quarterback against the Miami Dolphins in Super Bowl 17, which the Redskins won 27-17. Hell, 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 hell. Yeah. Okay. Last question. During Norv Turner's tenure as Redskins head coach, did he lead his team to the playoffs? True or false? During Norv Turner's tenure as Redskins head coach, did he lead his team to the playoffs? True or false? Answer: true. Okay. Moving on. Now we're going to our next set of questions for our next segment. And as promised, as always, I will reveal the answers. And before I get started on that, I just want to say thank you to all my subscribers out there. Much love. I love you guys. And if this is your first time, thank you for watching. Hit that subscribe button. And for those that are already subscribers, much love to you. Keep watching. Stay tuned for further developments. And if you have any comments, if you have any thoughts, ideas on how I can better my show or anything, I would love to hear from you. Scroll down at the bottom of the screen, go to the comments section, type it in, and I'd love to hear from you. All right. First question for our next segment. True or false question. Is it true Deion Primetime Sanders was a member of the Washington Redskins in his long storied career? Is it true Deion Primetime Sanders was a member of the Washington Redskins in his storied career? True or false? Second question. Is it true that the Redskins-Eagles infamous body bag game in 1991 prompted the NFL to enforce the third quarterback rule. True or false? Is it true that the Redskins Eagles infamous body bag game in 1991 prompt the NFL to enforce the third quarterback rule? True or false? Last question. How many rushing touchdowns did John Riggins have in the 1983 season? How many touchdowns did running back John Riggins have in the 1983 season? I will have these answers for you on the next segment, as promised as always. And with that said, we're going to go in today with our Redskins history. We're going to go back in time, but today we're going to do a player profile. And that player, that player happens to be Bobby Mitchell, former kick returner, wide receiver, running back. He was number 49. He was drafted out of the state of Illinois. He was 6 foot tall, 192 pounds. His NFL career spanned 11 seasons, 1958 to 1968. And his years with the Redskins was from 1962 to 1968. And he was a Hall of Fame inductee. And he was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 1983. Bobby Mitchell was born June 6, 1935. And he was from Hot Springs, Arkansas. Okay, so we're going to go into our player profile today and take a closer look at Bobby Mitchell. Bobby Mitchell was in for a culture shock. A star running back for the Cleveland Browns in the late 1950s and early 1960s. He and his teammates would travel through Washington by bus in D.C. to play the Redskins and see large numbers of black people in the pockets of the city, thinking they would immediately embrace the first black player to join what was then the NFL's last all-white team. We'd say, man, this is super, he remembered. It was anything but. Mitchell came to D.C. as part of a handful of black players to join the Redskins for the 1962 season after the U.S. government, forced the Redskins to integrate. Wow, isn't that history? He found Washington to be a segregated city, emblematic of the Old South, with many restaurants and other places that refused to admit blacks. His acceptance among both blacks and whites as a football player was not automatic either. So, they hadn't had a black star here, so it was tough for everybody to accept that. Maybe it would have been a little better and easier for everybody if I'd come here as a Redskin draftee and then work my way from there. But I came as a star, and a lot of people weren't ready for that. They didn't know how to handle it, both blacks and whites. I caught the devil from both sides. You can understand that blacks have been waiting for a black star for a long time, and they wanted me to be a Superman. I couldn't do that. I made mistakes like everybody else out there. Mitchell's exploits far outweighed his shortcomings. The veritable big play threat switched the flanker before the 1962 season, caught at least 58 passes in his first 6 years in Washington, once leading the league in catches and twice in receiving yardage. Blessed with exceptional speed and acceleration, uncanny faking ability, and terrific lateral moves and balance, he was twice named All-Pro and played in the Pro Bowl 3 times, representing the burgundy and gold. Mitchell's numbers were staggering. By the time he retired in 1968 after 11 seasons, he gained 7,954 yards receiving, 2,735 rushing yards, plus 2,690 yards on kickoff returns, and 699 yards on punt returns. His 14,078 combined yards were the third highest total in NFL history at the time, and his 91 touchdowns ranked 5th. Bobby Mitchell was one of the greatest all-around ball players, said Baltimore Colts Hall of Famer Lenny Moore, who also switched from running back to receiver in the same era as Mitchell. Anybody who can transition himself and be one of the best in the business at both positions, that's saying something, man. Bobby Mitchell. Mitchell thrived at the position, posting league highs of 72 catches, 1,384 yards in 1962, both franchise records, plus 11 touchdown catches. He also scored a team high 72 points. In his first game as a Redskin, he zigzagged through the Cowboys defenders on a 92-yard kickoff return. The next week, he showed his old buddies, the Browns, what they were missing. He didn't touch the ball for the first 3 quarters, but with Cleveland ahead 16-10 and less than a minute to play, Snead hit him over the middle around midfield. Mitchell cut toward the sidelines, faked 2 defenders out of their shoes, faked them out of their drawers, with a breathtaking stop-and-go move and raced into the end zone. The Redskins won 17-16. In 1963, Mitchell led the league in receiving yards with 1,436, breaking the Redskin record he set the year before. Santana Moss broke his record in 2005. He also caught a 99-yard touchdown pass, an NFL long that has been accomplished several times over. In the coming years, Mitchell continued posting big numbers for the Redskins as part of one of the most lethal offensive attacks in NFL history. In one season, 1967, Taylor was first, tight end Jerry Smith second, Mitchell fourth in receptions in the league. Mitchell retired after the 1968 season, but legendary coach Vince Lombardi, hired by the Redskins before the 1969 campaign, influenced him to stay on in front office capacity. At the time, blacks weren't doing much of anything in the front office, Mitchell said. He remained with the Redskins for another 3+ decades, a period when the Redskins went to 5 Super Bowls, winning 3 times. His titles range from director of pro scouting to assistant to the president to assistant general manager, a slot he accepted in 1981 and held until his retirement in 2003. And that, my friends, is our player profile of the day. Bobby Mitchell, one of the all-time Redskin greats and Hall of Famer. Okay, we're going to go to our shining moment, our gem of the day. And we're going to go back to the year of 1991. That was a transition time, big time of transition for the Washington Redskins. Earlier, they had played a game, and our shining moment profile of the game takes us, our shining moment gem of the day takes us to our NFC wildcard game. January 4th, 1991, Veterans Stadium, 65,287 in attendance, where the Redskins played the Eagles. 2 months prior, there was a Monday night game. There was a Monday night game between the Washington Redskins and a hated rivals, the Philadelphia Eagles. And it is one of the most infamous games in Redskins history. And that game was known as the body bag game. And leading up to this NFC wildcard game, the body bag game was a cold game. The Redskins were beaten up, beaten down, humiliated, decimated, and embarrassed. The Philadelphia Eagles won that game 28-14. And in that game, one of the Eagles players shouted, "Hey, do you guys need another body bag?" 9 Redskin starters were injured in that game. Starting quarterback Jeff Rutledge, injured, taken out of the game. Backup quarterback Stan Humphries, injured, knocked out of the game. Their situation was so bad that they had to use an emergency quarterback. Kick returner Brian Mitchell, who played quarterback in college, had to come into the game and quarterback the Redskins as he had them drive for one touchdown near the end of the game because the game was pretty much over 28-7. But they drove down the field and scored one last touchdown in the fourth quarter, meaningless touchdown. And that game right there was something that the Redskins never forgot. 2 months later, it takes us to our shining moment. NFC wildcard game, January 4th, 1991 in Veterans Stadium. And right before this game, the Eagles were doing a lot of talking, including their crazy coach at the time, Coach Buddy Ryan. And they were pretty much talking about how they were going to beat the Redskins up again and what they were going to do to them. And Coach Buddy Ryan predicted that the Redskins running back Ernest Biner, who was known infamously in Cleveland for the fumble in a playoff game against the Denver Broncos in the late 80s, that could have sent them to the Super Bowl. Well, Ernest Biner was now on the Redskins at the time. He was running back, and Coach Buddy Ryan was predicting that Ernest Biner was going to fumble 3 times. Well, as we go into the game, of all games that meant the most to the Redskins and Skins Nation and their organization, conference, division championships, including the Super Bowl, this game right here was of vital importance. And Coach Joe Gibbs had his players ready. And the wonderful thing about Coach Joe Gibbs, he let his players see the film of that game. And it was a horrible night. It was an embarrassing night. And the Redskins never forgot it. And he told his players, keep quiet. We're going to win with class. We're not going to talk. We're going to do our talking out on the field. Well, sure enough, that's exactly what the Redskins did in this playoff game. That's about as excited as our football team had been in a while, Coach Joe Gibbs said. It stemmed more from having your rear end kicked. When you get your clock clean like that, all we had to do was show the film. Probably the biggest lost my tongue again, sorry. Probably the biggest motivating factor is to whip somebody really good and they'll remember it. The 20-6 shocker wasn't even close. Redskins coordinator Richie Pettibone devised a scheme that befuddled the Eagles offense and his magician on his feet, quarterback Randall Cunningham, whom the Redskins sacked 5 times. Redskins quarterback Mark Rippon, he was protected all game. He was not sacked at all. He picked apart Philly's ferocious defense just at the right times. The Redskins' workhorse in the latter part of the regular season, running back Ernest Biner, accounted for 126 total yards. And the Eagles did their share of chest thumping in the days prior, thinking that they would obliterate the Redskins for the second straight time. Brash and bombastic Eagles coach Buddy Ryan mouthed off. And once again, the Redskins kept quiet. They got on the field and they dominated. So they wanted to strike while the Eagles' mouths were hot. And that's exactly what happened. In the early minutes, Eagles quarterback Randall Cunningham hit Keith Jackson on a 66-yard gain down to the Redskins 11. The Redskins defense stiffened, and the Eagles had to settle for a field goal for an early 3-0 lead. In the second quarter, the Eagles recovered a fumble by running back Gerald Riggs, and they took possession on the Redskins 25. Philly moved the ball to the 2-yard line, but once again, the Redskins defense tightened, and the Eagles had to settle for a field goal. Field goal up, field goal good, Eagles up 6-0. Mark Rippon shifted into gear. He hit wide receiver Art Monk on a 3rd and 9 for 28 yards to the Eagles' 39-yard line. And after connecting with Ernest Biner for 23 yards, Rippon found Monk for a 16-yard touchdown. Hell to the Redskins, and the Redskins took a 7-6 lead about 6 minutes before halftime. After regaining possession, the Redskins drove deep in the Eagles' territory where Mark Rippon connected with Ernest Biner in the flat for 10 yards. When Philly cornerback Ben Smith flipped Biner over, he fumbled, hitting the ground. Smith picked up the ball and ran 94 yards for a touchdown. Suddenly, Buddy Ryan looked like a genius. Wrong. The officials reviewed the play, and on the tape, it ruled that Biner's knee had hit the ground before he fumbled, and there were boos from the stadium and Veterans Stadium. The Eagles fans were hot. They were upset, and the Redskins retained the ball. So, the Redskins sent the Eagles fans into another rage. Redskins place kicker Chip Low-Miller kicked the field goal, making the score 10-6 at halftime. All right. The third quarter, Low-Miller, once again, was true from close range, and he put the Redskins up 13-6, while Randall Cunningham continued to struggle against the Redskins' defense as the Redskins swarmed him with blitzing and shut down his receivers, and it caused the Eagles coach Buddy Ryan to make a move. He took his quarterback Randall Cunningham out of the game and replaced him with veteran Jim McMahon, who threw 3 incomplete passes, who did no better, and Mark Rippon iced the victory for the Redskins on the next possession with a 3-yard scoring pass to Gary Clark, and that sent the Redskins up to a 20-6 lead. Randall Cunningham returned in the fourth quarter, but the defense kept up the pressure, and the Eagles could not move the ball any more than they did earlier in the game with Randall Cunningham in the game. So, offensive line coach Jim Hannafin remembers a few players, including guard Russ Grimm, walking on the sideline saying, "Nobody say anything bad. Shh, don't say anything. Let's not even talk about it." In the post-game locker room, NFL Films caught Coach Gibbs imploring his troops to win with style, and that's exactly what the Redskins did. They defeated the Philadelphia Eagles 20-6 in a wild card game. The Redskins would go on to the NFC divisional playoff game the next week, and they would lose it to the 49ers and might not make the Super Bowl. But his adversary, Buddy Ryan, a loser of 3 straight opening round playoff games, was fired a few days later. That's what happens when you run your mouth. So, with that said, going back to the body bag game 2 months earlier, that game right there set the foundation and also was an inspiration for our beloved Redskins the next year to compile a 14-2 regular season record, and they drove it all the way to the playoffs, defeating Buffalo in Super Bowl 36. And that was our shining moment of the day. Redskins winning once again the NFC wild card game. January 4th, 1991. Washington 20. Philadelphia 6. All right. We're going to move on now. We're going to go to our news. All right. Today, it was discussed that Josh Doctson may be traded before the regular season starts. That's some big news. Wide receiver that was drafted, I believe 4 years ago. Would be his 4th season out of TCU. And it's just been, the journey has just been disappointing. He hasn't really produced. He hasn't really had that breakout year that we all expected. And, that gets the Booty Award. So the Booty Award is very much deserving of T